love to hear how you got started in PR, what made you want to study PR, and what made you want to pursue a career in PR?
Yeah. So I came to Biola not as a PR major or PR concentration at that point. I was actually intending to become a woman apologist who's doing Christian apologetics, for those of you who are aware of that field, answering questions about the faith and giving a defense for it. And when I got here, I realized that they didn't have an undergrad degree in that. I should have known that before. And there was only a graduate degree. So I decided I was going to follow in the footsteps of Lee Strobel, who was a famous apologist, and he was a journalist. So I picked journalism. They had a PR. I thought, I like people. I'll do that. And little did I know that that moment was God changing my trajectory and helping me on a path that I didn't even know existed. I ended up graduating, going full-time into my graduate work while also working full-time for a Christian PR agency, working with some of the most amazing ministries I've had the opportunity to serve. And I realized that public relations and Christian apologetics go hand in hand. It's our capacity to build relationships, our capacity to build that link. And so while at one point I thought, I need to do this through an organization that's a Christian apologetics organization, the work of churches and Christian organizations and even business owners who have Christian values and are Christians but maybe running non-Christian organizations are doing and creating good in this world. And public relations was the opportunity to be that bridge, so I fell in love with it. I fell in love with helping make those connections.
You know, I'd love to hear more about how public relations is a Christian endeavor. You know, public relations feels like, you know, I'm managing my image online or to other people, but how can that be a Christian thing?
Yeah, such a good question. One of my favorite, actually, because public relations has so many image issues as a discipline. And one is that we kind of spin or we're just about the image. But in today's age, and a Christian perspective on this would be that a reputation, an image, a brand, it's in the mind of the beholder, sort of like beauty. Beauty is in the mind of the beholder. And so it's all about what you think about something. PR's goal is to align what is true with what you're thinking and create a strong brand. And as a Christian, what I love about it is the redemptive force to align truth and humanity. I think we were created for relationship. And as you watch the human race develop and grow throughout scriptures, you see the growth of interpersonal, but then you see the growth of organizations and the influence that leaders and organizations have on individuals and on movements and on history. And with that development, public relations comes on the scene because public relations is that bridge. It's connecting people and organizations. So a Christian endeavor in this is to be God's redemptive force in society and culture to produce good, to redeem good, and to bring reconciliation.
Well, I think an aspect of PR, if I can say so, is social media. You know, if I could ask, what is the purpose of social media? Why did it get designed? It's just used for so many different things. I just want to hear, what is its goal?
So I think to answer that question, you really kind of need to go back to some of the grandfather platforms at this point and why they were created. And you'll see that many of them were created for one-to-one relationships. A lot of them started with college demographics. In fact, Facebook used to only be available based on campuses. And the idea was it was an opportunity to make that connection with your friends. Hence Facebook, you're just putting the face and the friend together. And other platforms grew following that model. What we see today is different because it's developed. As social media platforms grow, they move from one-to-one, they move from friend to friend to saying, oh, now we have business profiles. So Instagram did that a few years back and it switched. And if you do a business profile, you can sell and you can advertise and you can monetize and you can look at the ROI. And once you make that shift, it is a little different. I think fundamentally, social media is about being social and about creating that connection. Practically, in the outworking, it looks very different interpersonally as well as organizationally at this point.
You know, if I could say also, the way it kind of plays out in social media is we just kind of create these echo chambers, I think that's the term, and we reinforce our own thoughts with the people that are like us, and we just talk about it, and it amplifies our own voices, right? How do we get out of these echo chambers to actually develop good connections and good conversations with people?
It's a great question. One of the research projects I'm in is actually looking at echo chambers right now and why we have echo chambers. And there's kind of some interesting stuff coming out. One is we're actually afraid to break out and be in conversations that are other than our typical because of the hostility and the lack of civility that we might encounter. We also maybe aren't going on social media platforms to leverage that strength of ours to engage in conversation. It often is something we do mindlessly, and so we're picking it up, and we don't want to be, okay, let me think through all of the nuances for that. So those are two things that feed into that. I think to break free from that, really it's a holistic pursuit. I often argue with my students or position to my students, not argue, that social media is an outworking of who you are at your core anyway. It's not something you do on the side. So if you want to be outside of echo chambers on social media, you need to be outside of echo chambers in your offline life as well, with the people around you, with the kind of conversations you're holding. And I think that naturally gives you the muscles and the strength to do that and mirror that in the digital world.
Oh, I love that. You said you're offline person, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we cultivate our online person, and that feels like a natural thing for us to do. How do we cultivate our offline person to match our online person?
Yes, great. So for me, my perspective is you're always aligning what is true with what is perceived. And we put a lot more intentional focus in the digital world. We're looking at how do we do the right photo and how do we post things that look aesthetically pleasing. But I think what we need to remember is the digital world should always be an extension of who you are at your core. And so that means that you also need to be thinking about your offline personality. And as much as we diversify and think about what we're putting online, are you diversifying and thinking about what you're doing offline in your personal, in your one-on-one with God, in your friend groups, with your church? Because you can't be a whole and vibrant and thriving person on social media and expect that to impact your offline. Your offline actually will be what feeds into your digital presence.
So is it fair for me to say that the offline personality is a little bit more important than the online personality? Or is it like both very, very important, and so they're almost equal these days?
Yeah. So what you do online can get you fired. I think that's really important to know. But what you do online should be a mirror. It should be reflecting. It's really central to who you are, and we are not created digital. We use digital. It's a tool. So you have to be very careful with the sacredness of what God has given you. Your embodied, lived experience is huge and significant, and then you use a digital tool to expand and enhance maybe sharing what's happening. But it does have to start with who you are, and that is not something that is digital. It's an extension.
Well, there's anonymous social media, right? So we're kind of cutting off our, our offline and our online personalities. So if I'm doing anonymous social media like Yik Yak, or even like DMing people who post things on anonymous on Instagram or things like that, right? What do you think about anonymous social media?
Oh, I have so many thoughts on anonymous social media.
I kept it broad, so you can just jump in.
So I'll take it back first to my area of study. Media ecology is what we talk about when we look at what kind of technology we've chosen to develop as a human race, how that changes us, and how that influences what we develop next. When we go back to the very beginning, before we had writing, introducing writing was scary for people. They felt like there were a lot of inherent problems. And one of those problems, one of the criticisms, was that you were separating the communicator from the communication, and that was dehumanizing the process of communicating. And I think that's an important thing that plays into this conversation, because what you're doing when you're doing anonymous social media is you're realizing that, hey, I'm going to separate my identity from this. I'm actually not going to put me with my communication. And I would argue that that is inherently problematic, particularly as a Christian. When we look at the redemptive work of communication and the original intent of communication and how God designed communication to work, it requires your presence. It requires you showing up. It requires you doing the work to have hard, difficult, great types of conversations. You need to be in all of them, but you have to show up. You can't just throw the words at someone. So for me, I see there's a lot of problems with anonymous social media. It's problems for our culture and problems for society, but I think we can start the discussion with how humans were designed to function in the first place.
Yeah. So I've heard you talk about technology, and I think in general you think technology is a good thing. I'd love for you to talk about what the context of technology is helpful for and how we can rightly use technology as well.
Yes, I am wildly optimistic for technology. I'm a huge fan of what it can do in our culture, what it does for society, what it does for us as individuals. But I think like any tool, it takes wisdom. So to use it well, you have to really have a lot of self-awareness. You have to exercise what's happening in your heart, your soul, and your mind. What we're seeing is people aren't doing that, and we're having high levels of addiction to social technology, levels of anxiety and depression and isolation, which is interesting because usually technology is created to create a connection somehow. The cell phone makes it so you can call people. FaceTime makes it so you feel like you're right there. Social media so you connect to people. And yet, overusing it creates problems. And what people usually want me to do is give like a 5-step process that applies to everyone. And that doesn't work
because
Yeah.
we're humans and we're complicated.
Yeah.
What works for me is not going to work for someone else. So you need to know, where do you thrive
Yeah.
and what point do you cross that line? When are you dehumanizing? Either dehumanizing other people through your communication,
Yeah.
or when are you experiencing a dehumanization yourself where you are either less than what you were hoping for, you get on social media and you walk away feeling angry or sad or alone. It's not producing what I would argue is human thriving.
Yes.
And when you start seeing that, those should be not even like a yellow slow down light, but a red light. There's a project I worked on called Untethering, and it was an ask of people to untether from technology. So if you've ever played tetherball, maybe I'm dating myself here, there's a string between the ball and the pole, and it can't ever get away.
Yeah.
And we use the term tethering for technology because where it was once designed to help, if you cannot untether, you are just circling around technology, and it now rules you instead of you using it as a tool to connect with others.
Yes. We're going to pause there. You said a lot. Human thriving, I like that too. Okay? We're going to invite our worship team to lead us in a song, and we're going to invite you guys to text in questions and social media and questions that we'll get to after our reflection song. All right, Carolyn, we're going to jump into the questions. Here we go. Here's our first question. What is the good of social media? Why should I use it at all if it is so dangerous?
Great question. You know, I started saying I'm wildly optimistic about technology, and the reason is I believe the pursuit of humans is important. I believe the pursuit of connection and communication is really central to who we are as people. So social media has some powerful ways to do that, and we see people all around the globe using social media to form communication, to form relationships, to share ideas. When people ask me about it being dangerous, I think that actually shows a great deal of wisdom because there is a dark side to social media. But I am emboldened as someone who sees the dark side. I study it a lot and we could talk a lot about it, but I also think the church is called to go where it's dark. Christians are called to go where it's dark. And if we pull back because social media is dark, we are removing something that could have great redemptive power.
Yeah.
Some of the most dynamic conversations you can have are with people through social media when it's handled well, when you're using certain principles to guide those. So I would say there's limits, there's ways to use it, but I would encourage you to think through what are the ways that social media might help you flourish as a human and might allow you to enter into spaces where others could flourish because of your presence.
Yeah, great. Here's another question. How would you define human thriving? It's a word that we've been throwing around, but how would you define that?
I was thinking someone might ask that, so I was wondering.
Yeah.
So human thriving has a lot of definitions. To me, when you define human thriving, you have to go to the person who created us. So God lays out some principles for human thriving, and I think we see the fullness of humanity as part of human thriving. It's the full recognition of Imago Dei, that you are dignified. It is the proper use of your skills and expertise. So when you say human thriving, you're not feeling exhausted and depressed all the time. You're not always sad. You're not always in this hard, dark place.
Yeah.
There are many things that will take you there, but when you can thrive as a human, you find yourself almost having those moments where you're just feeling so alive and you're flowing and things are coming more naturally.
Yeah.
And it also could be that you're in a hard time, but you can tell at your soul, at the core of who you are, that you are right where God designed you to be in that moment. And you, even in the hard, are able to feel his presence and feel that you are doing what you were created to in that moment.
I love that. Here's another question. How do we balance the idea of honesty and privacy on social media?
Yeah, those are really two huge areas. Privacy is a huge area of concern to me as a parent when I start thinking about that,
Right.
as well as someone who works with students. So I think there is a lot to be said for privacy, and I would recommend being overly protective of your data,
Yes.
being overly protective of what you share. I think we share far too much. Honesty, I think, is something that actually is really important in all contexts. But what I think we fail to do is realize how honesty or truth-telling needs to go hand in hand with love and kindness. It's not simply throwing out honest information. In PR, we talk about all content being created with intent. It should trigger a reaction. And I think that actually applies to us as people. When we say something, we're looking to trigger a reaction, so it matters how we say it, when we say it, and to who we say it. And on social media, if all you're doing is trying to throw truth out there, you're not really considering who's receiving it and whether they can actually grab hold of that and engage with that. So that's how I would balance honesty.
Yeah, I love that. You have good definitions.
Thanks.
If I could just say that. You have really good ways of explaining things. So, okay, here's another one. Okay, it's no secret that the Biola student community submits anonymous messages to a few Okay, there we go. I was trying to talk about this subvertly, but there we go.
It's right there.
To a few different Instagram accounts, and these negative messages are shared for all students to see. Can you explain why this may be harmful?
I have so many thoughts. Let me hit a few. This is actually a really big conversation. First, let's go back to how humans were created to communicate. Your presence is necessary, and I wonder what causes us to feel the necessity to communicate something without our identity. It makes me wonder why we need to do that and why it's in a mass setting, and what it says about either our sense of identity or our sense of what we're communicating. Second, I think what people sometimes tell me when I've talked to students about this is, well, it's the kind of thing that just has to be said, right? But I can't say it. There's repercussions. Interesting to think about that because all content is created with intent. So what repercussions are you hoping is going to happen when you send it out?
Right.
But also, I've been reading a great book called Good and Angry, and I think it really talks about this because when you're upset about something, there's actually a really great process to communicate that. And being upset, recognizing anger, recognizing something that's wrong gives you a platform to help redeem.
Yeah.
But with that, this author uses a great phrase called the constructive, dissatisfied act of mercy. You should be communicating in a way that brings about redemption and goodness. So if it's a negative situation, breaking apart your identity, hiding behind something where you're not actually engaging in the solution or the conversation, I think is harmful to yourself and to the community. And if it's a great thing that you're celebrating, share it with everyone. Let's put our identity behind it.
Right.
So I think we dehumanize ourselves when we become anonymous, and I think we dehumanize the act of communication itself.
Wow. Okay. There we
Thank
go.
you.
There we go. There we go. Okay. Here's another question. What is your opinion on social media cleanses? Do you have any advice on how to form a healthy relationship with social media?
Do those cleanses. Stay off social media. I think it's really helpful. I think you're more dynamic on social media when you take time away from social media. And that means not even having the alerts come up on your phone. In terms of how to form a healthy relationship, it's going to be different for each person. I actually need a lot of time away from technology. Because I study technology, speak on technology, and use technology all the time, I take a lot of time off. And that has taken the process of me explaining to people why I'm not going to be accessible, why I'm not on social media. But it also means that I've had to do a lot of reflecting on why simply taking a night off of social media isn't enough for me. Other people, that's plenty of time. So you need to be very self-aware and recognize when you're starting to see some of those triggers that you're spending too much time on digital and put those practices in. I have a great mentee of mine who has a note in her phone and she checks social media once a week. It's amazing, and she's really alive by that, and all her friends know that, and that's great. Once a week would be hard for me, given my life. So it's going to be different for each person.
Once a week?
Right?
Oh my goodness.
It's awesome.
How does she do that? Okay.
She's brilliant. She's awesome.
Here's another question. Do you think it's right to apologize on social media? I think apologetics apologize.
Yes, totally. No, I was tracking with that.
Yeah.
You know, I see evangelism and apologetics as a natural extension of who I am as a Christian and as a believer.
Yes.
But the thing about social media is it's not one-to-one. And the thing about evangelism and apologetics is it's often taking place out of relationships. So you need to know the person.
Yeah,
and
good.
it's really helpful to consider if using social media is helpful for that relationship and that person. Often what I've seen happening is you share the message and maybe the one-to-one is working, but because social media is a public-facing platform, there's all of these other people who are jumping in, and now you've lost the central element of relationship. And it's harder to engage with 100 people in varying spots in their faith journeys when you're sharing one thing. And so you go back to the idea of what's communication designed for, and can it foster it? Sometimes it can. I've seen people do it really well, and other times it's probably better to grab coffee or pick up the phone or buy a plane ticket and go see them.
Wow. I love how practical you are, just so you know, too. It's just so clear. I love it. Okay, here's another one. Okay, what are some ways we can ensure that we are not tethered to technology, but only use it as a tool?
Yeah, so a good gut check for this is if I asked you for your phone right now, would you panic because you wouldn't have it? Or would you ask for how long can't you have your phone? If you start to get anxious when you think of no technology, that might mean you're too tethered to technology. Because your first question isn't what are you going to do without technology, like, oh good, I get to read a book or have coffee. It's more, how long, and let me do a countdown. So that's a good thing. But some things you can do to think about knowing whether you're too tethered is also, you can put timers on your phone. How many minutes of your day are you spending on social media, or how often do you check it? I saw on average someone checks it like 40 times an hour sometimes, because you check it for a couple seconds.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? And are we checking in with others 40 times an hour? So I would really look at your behaviors, because behaviors tend to reflect the values, opinions, and beliefs that you hold as a human.
Yeah, that's good. Here's another one. How do we post something about ourselves without giving into pride?
Good question. So I've thought a lot about this, because it's really tricky when you're an author or you're someone who's supposed to be sharing things, but you're wondering about this pride question.
Yeah.
And I think a good litmus test is, what are you trying to create? You're creating that content, what's the reaction you're hoping to see? Sometimes it's amazing to share with your community what's happening, and it's a celebration, and that's good. But I've even found myself, sometimes I'll post something, and don't judge. If no one's liked it in the first 10 seconds, I'm like, oh, I gotta pull it off. This is too much. And I realize that my identity then is very tied to your response to my post. And that's kind of an issue of pride, because I need you to affirm me, and that's kind of an indication that I'm valuing myself. But if I'm simply sharing it, and whether you like it or not, that's okay. I'm sharing it, and it's a cool thing. I think that's a good way to kind of evaluate it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Here's another one. Are there jobs in... have you... Okay, I guess this one. Okay. Are there jobs in public relations where you don't use social media?
Absolutely. There are so many jobs. I don't know if this was a planted question. This is great. Public relations is in every organization around the globe doing a variety of things. Social media is one of our tools and tactics, but there are so many other ways we build relationships, and those other ways often don't even require social media.
Yeah, that's great. So like people just type things or something.
You could type, you could grab coffee, you could be in the middle of a crisis, you could hold a press conference, you could run an event, you could do communications for your church and be part of the team that helps the volunteers, meet with donors. There's so much.
So much.
Good.
Okay. Here's another question. Have you found any resistance as a woman in PR?
Okay. Yes. I think I have. I think anytime we manage our identity, it's important to consider what's happening. And sometimes there are gender situations in workplaces, and I would say I have encountered gendered situations. But I don't know if it's just something that God has given me. I really like challenges. I like them a lot. I'm pretty competitive.
Yeah.
So if you give me a challenge, I'm like, all right, we're going to solve it and we're going to overcome it, because what we do matters, how we respond matters, and it doesn't just matter for us here and now. It matters for those who follow us, and it matters for those who we're interacting with. So I think anytime you encounter resistance, whether it's based on gender or any other type of definition of who you are, it's helpful to consider, how do you engage the place you're experiencing the resistance and create a genuine bridge that might break down those obstacles.
Yes. Okay. Here's another question. If the online is a reflection of the offline, then how wise would it be to add the negative aspects, problems of our offline to our social medias?
This is a really insightful question, because we do want to be whole people, and we don't want to create just this false persona on social media.
Yeah.
But always go back to the platform, what you're saying and why. So why are you going to put your problem on social media? And what do you hope to see come of it? I know when we had a bad accident with my son, that was not positive. It wasn't awesome. And when I posted on social media, I got a lot of encouragement. People were letting me know they were praying for us, and they were sending. So that problem was helpful. Sometimes when I have confusion, like I don't know what to do, and I post it, there's some answers. But there's other times when what's going wrong, posting it on social media, I'm not going to get anything from the responses. I'm really just kind of adding to the noise. And when we talk about pollution here in LA, we generally think of air, but there's pollution of our communication. And so you need to ask yourself, is this going to bring about cleansing and help for me, or am I going to add to the pollution of negativity? So I think that can help.
That's good. Here's another question. Do you think that the impact that technology has had on the younger generations has been primarily beneficial or detrimental?
Oh, I do really poor with binary questions. So I'm going to go straight down the middle. I don't think it's one or the other. I really think it has a lot of things. I think there are things about the generation that grew up with technology that have made it more aware of the global perspectives on things, made us understand how there are other people in this world outside of where we're at. It's allowed for connections. It's allowed for fundraising opportunities. It's allowed for so many dynamic things. We could even talk about how the persecuted church uses technology and children are able to come to Christ through that. There's great things. There's also really negative things. There's studies coming out now with the 11 to 14-year-old age group being afraid to go outside because they know they can never control their whole identity because everyone's taking pictures, everyone's putting it online. So even if they're not on social media, their identity is being forced on social media, and that creates a lot of anxiety and fear. So I think it's a both and.
Wow. Okay. Here's another question. While echo chambers can be made worse by social media, does it not stem more from a demonization of the opposing ideology?
That's a really good question because I think it hits on exactly what we've been saying. What happens on social media is a reflection of what's going on with us.
Yeah.
So if we are holding the perspective that we are going to just attack people who hold other views versus having really robust conversations, that does lead to echo chambers. And it leads to echo chambers offline. We don't use that term very often, but if you're just going to go out and attack, we're all going to start just staying in our own little tribe and our own little conversation. So I do think they're connected. Yeah, that was awesome.
Great. Well, Carolyn, our last question we always ask is what biblical principles help shape your thoughts for today?
They really stem from Genesis for me. PR, social media starts in Genesis in my mind. It starts with the fact that God communicated in the Trinity before we even see him create man, and that tells me that communication is important, sacred, and designed for a purpose. Then when we see the creation of mankind, the very moment mankind is created, we see relationship as part of that. Relationship with God, relationship with other, and relationship with yourself. And so the role of communication, identity, and personhood is grounded in Genesis, and anytime, whether in social media or offline, we start dissecting the purpose of communication or dehumanizing ourselves or others, I think those are the guides that help us stay on track.
Discover who you're called to be at Biola University, a leading Christ-centered university in Los Angeles, with programs on campus and online. Subscribe for more of our videos and learn more at biola.edu.